Alright everyone, so now I am going to start walking you through the different models for 1.2.2 where we work with the different tools. The first thing I want to show you is how to create a folder. So you'll notice here that I've created a 122 CAD models demo folder. The folders are really useful because instead of having all of these different parts just floating out here, if I create a folder first, I actually can have all of my projects inside of one place. So to create a folder, you go over here to create, and you're going to choose folder, and then you can name this 1.2.2 CAD models, and then hit create. Once you have hit that create button, you can then click on the folder for the link, and this says there's no documents in here, and that's because I haven't created any. But now that I'm inside of this folder, I can create all of the models for 1.2.2, and they'll be in the same location. Okay, so the first object that we are going to create from our slides is the object that uses the Revolve tool. So inside of my 122 CAD models folder, I'm going to hit the create button, and I'm going to choose document. I'm going to name this document 1.2.2 Revolve, and then my last name. I'm going to hit the OK button, and it's going to take me to my workspace in Onshape. If you look at the slides, you'll notice that on slide 6 of our activity guide, we have a blueprint that allows us to create the side profile of that sleeve. Now we're using the Revolve tool to create the sleeve, so we only have to create part of the view. We don't have to create the entire object. So we have to start by creating a new sketch. So I'm going to choose sketch. I'm going to move my window out of the way, and I'm going to choose the front plane. I'm then going to use my view cube to rotate to the front, and I'm going to follow along with the dimensions on that blueprint. So I'm going to start by grabbing the line tool, and I am going to create the basic shape that is illustrated on the slide. Now you'll notice I'm kind of avoiding the origin lines, and I'm doing that very intentionally because I don't want to over constrain. Some of you ran into that last week where you got attached to these lines, and that created some issues. Now you'll notice I overextended this line, and that is so I could hit the escape key and just connect across here. Once I've done that, the interior is going to change color. I'm going to grab the trim tool, and I'm going to delete that portion of the line. And I want to get rid of that guy too. So I'm just going to trim those away. And now that I have created that overall shape, I need to dimension it. So let's start. I like to go in a circle and start from left to right and just move clockwise across my drawing. So I'm going to start with this line right here, and the dimension on slide 6 for that is 0.5 inches. Then I have this distance right here, which is 0.156. Then I know my overall, then I know this guy right here is, oops, you can see I got caught on that line. If you need to, you can zoom in. Now, if you're on a Mac and you have a trackpad, you can pinch to zoom. That might work on other devices as well. I'm not sure. But I'm going to click and drag, and this is 0.25. We're going to hit enter, and then I'm going to zoom back out, and my length across the bottom here is 4.469. So those are my overall dimensions. So I have most of this shape done. Now you'll notice in the drawing above in this area there is a dashed line. That's called a construction line, and that's actually what allows us to revolve around to create that cylindrical shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my line tool, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line and hit the escape key. I'm then going to come up here to my construction button. I'm going to click on this line and then click on the construction button, and it's going to turn this into a dashed line. So the real trick is that I have to place this line in the correct location in order to get the right connection for my revolution. So I'm going to dimension from the construction line to the top of my model. It's a little bit of a tricky click. I'm going to drag this over here, and that is 0.09375. I know that seems really itty bitty, but you'll see why it's there in just a moment. So I'm going to finish this sketch, and I'm going to use my view cube to rotate to the isometric view again. And now I'm going to select my Revolve tool. And first it asks me to select the face or sketch that I want to revolve. So I'm going to click here. And then I'm going to click on this red box that says Revolve Axis. And then I'm going to click on the construction line, and it's going to give me a preview of that revolution. And then I'm going to hit the green check mark. So you'll see we have a large opening here, but if we rotate over here, we have the smaller opening just like you can see on slide 5. Now, something that we are missing is the fillet that has to go on these edges to give it those curved surfaces. You'll notice on slide 5 that there is an R.25 TYP. That means the radius of those fillet edges is 0.25 inches, and that's typical for all of the fillets. So I'm going to grab my fillet tool from right here, and I'm going to select this edge and this edge, and I'm going to change this to 0.25 and hit the green check mark. So now I have finished my revolution sleeve. And so now I would just close the document and I can start my next model. Okay, everyone, so the second model that we are going to take a look at is how to use the hole tool. So in my folder 122 CAD models, I'm going to hit the create button and choose document, and I'm going to label this 122 holes, and then you should put your last name on it. Once I hit OK, it's going to load my workspace as it usually does. For this model, I'm actually going to create my new sketch on my top view. So once I'm here, I'm going to use the top view of the view cube to rotate. And I am going to get my center point circle tool. And I'm actually going to start at the origin. And I'm just going to drag out. I now need to dimension this circle, so that's the correct size. If we look at our slide 10 blueprint, we'll see that the overall diameter of this circle is 4 inches. So I'm going to type in number 4 and hit enter. Once I've done that, I'm going to go to the lower right area of my view cube, and that's going to rotate me back to my isometric. I'm now going to close this sketch and grab the extrude tool, and I'm going to click inside that circle, and I actually need to extrude this to a thickness of 1.5, which we can see on the 10th slide of our activity guide. And so now I am going to hit check. So now I have the base of where I'm going to be creating my holes. And the first thing we're going to do is we are actually going to create a new sketch right on the top of here. I'm going to rotate to the top again, and you will notice that we need to create a point on our circle that is 1.25 above the origin. So I'm going to grab my point tool, and I'm just going to place it right here on that horizontal line. I do want to make sure it's on there this time. I know normally we don't, but this time I do. I'm going to click on the point and click on my origin, and I'm going to set this distance to 1.25. And then I'm going to make sure my sketch stays open, but I'm going to switch tools. So I'm now going to switch to something called the circular pattern tool. So in order to get to the circular pattern tool, I click the little drop down arrow next to linear pattern, and I'm going to choose circular pattern. I'm going to click on this point, and you'll see that it automatically gives me this arrow around my circle, and it has a number 3 on it. If we look carefully on slide 10, we'll notice that we have a total of 5 holes. So I'm going to double click on this number 3. I'm going to change it to a 5, and I'm going to hit enter. So you'll notice that it extended the arrow a little bit, and now you'll see that on your mouse, on the next to your cursor, you have this funny little mouse with a green check mark on the left arrow. What that's saying is once you click, it's going to generate all 5 of these holes. So I double clicked on my trackpad for my laptop, and now you'll see I've got 5 holes placed right here on the top of my circle. So those are where we're actually going to use the hole tool. So now I'm going to rotate back down, and I'm going to close my sketch. Okay, so now that we've created those 5 points, we're now going to work through creating the various holes. So starting on slide 12, you will see that we start breaking down, correction, on slide 16, you'll see that we start breaking down each of the different hole styles that go on each of these locations. So the first one that we're going to do is the original hole that we created. So I'm going to choose the hole tool, and I am going to simply select just that location. Now, if you look on slide 16, you'll see that the menu has us set this, I'm going to move this over here, has this set to simple, and through. And then our overall depth we have set to 0.25. Now we want this to go through, or the diameter we want set to 0.25. I'm going to hit my enter key, and it's going to shrink that hole a little bit, and then I'm going to hit my green check mark. Now you'll notice that after I hit that green check mark, my other locations disappeared. The reason it did that is because Sketch 2 was technically consumed by the extrusion, by the feature that we just added. We can get those points back by coming over to the features panel and just clicking this little eyeball next to Sketch 2. So now it's brought that back so I can see my other points as well as my origin. So if I move on to slide 17, my second hole that I'm going to create is a counter bore hole. So I'm going to choose this. I'm going to click my second location. And where it says simple, I'm going to change this to a counter bore. And we're going to maintain through, and the standard is custom. This top one gets changed to 0.375. Then this is 0.75. And then we need to make this 0.25. I'm going to hit my enter key. It's going to update that. So you saw a slight shift over here. And then I'm going to hit my green check mark. Now you'll notice this time my holes didn't, or my other points did not disappear. That's because Sketch 2 is still visible over here in the features panel. So the next hole that I'm going to create is on slide 18, and it is my countersink hole. So I'm going to grab my hole tool. I'm going to click here. I am going to change this to countersink. We're going to keep it on through and custom. This stays 0.375. This gets changed to 0.75. And we have an 82-degree angle. I'm going to hit enter. You'll see a slight change. And then hit your green check mark. Slide 19 has our next hole. And it is a threaded hole. So a threaded hole is a hole that is created with threads inside or a textured area so that a bolt or a screw can twist into it and have a connection. So if you have like the lid of a water bottle that has a screw lid, or any other jar that has a lefty-loosey, righty-tighty opening lid, that's the outside of those are threaded, so that way they can connect together. So I am going to click on the hole tool, and I am going to select my next location. And this is going to change back to simple, but I'm going to change this to blind. So I am now given the option for my threads, and I'm going to change this one to 0.266. And this is going to change to 0.65. And I'm just going to click, and now I've created that hole. And then the last one I'm going to do is just another countersink hole. So I'm going to grab my hole tool, choose my last location. I am going to change this to countersink. We're going to change this back to through. This is going to be 0.217. Then we have 0.452, and this is actually a 90-degree. And we're just going to hit check. And that is my hole tool completed. So if I rotate to the top view, I can see the different style of holes that have occurred inside of my object. And because we had them all as through, they've gone completely through my model, so I can actually also see them from the bottom, with the exception of this hole right here, which is our blind, which is the threaded hole. Okay, and now I am just going to go over to my Onshape menu and hit Close Document, and my whole model is complete.